Pete Hat says, I would love to buy a True B van with a pop top, but hate the ProMaster chassis. What made you decide to do the pop top on the Transit, and have you had any issues with it thus far?
Okay, so I'll break this down into different parts. I
Hmm.
explained in the earlier part of this video why we selected the Transit, because I believe it's the best van. Um, I originally put the pop-up top because I really wanted to maximize that multi-purpose capability of having a somewhat smaller vehicle, and also I wanted a really great driving vehicle. So I'll explain a little bit. At the time, I lived in Berkeley, California, and my idea of adventure was every weekend. I had to work during the week, but every weekend I took off into the mountains. And the mountains are
Hmm.
about 3 hours away, 2.5 to 3 hours away. Sometimes you're sitting in traffic. Often you're in wind, because that's how California is. You get into the mountains and the wind's there. And so I wanted something that was relatively small, but I still wanted kind of all the features that you'd have in a van, with a big comfortable bed, a furnace, to keep warm when it's cold, all those things. And I kind of mapped out my brain. The only way to get the features I wanted was to put a pop-up top and have that bed, the primary bed, to be above the living space, so that if you look at an adventure van, most of the adventure vans don't have pop-up tops, and then what happens is that bed is in the back, taking up a ton of space. And that actually works if you have the extended length. But as you get into the smaller vans, the 20-foot vans, then all of a sudden you have a van that is mostly a riding bed. And so putting that bed up into the pop-up top just makes sense from an engineering and architectural standpoint. So that was what drove me to select the pop-up top. And of course, I thought the Transit was the best van, so that's why I put a pop-up top on a Transit. Um,
Hmm.
have we had problems? So we have about 150 customers driving our vans all across the U.S. right now. So to say that we've never had a problem, that would not be true. We have had problems. I would say the problems have been way less than I expected in the beginning, though. We actually have very few problems. Some of the problems were growing pains. So, for example, we had people that we trained on how to do certain things like sealing the pop-up top so that we didn't get water leaks, and we discovered that the training wasn't as effective as we had hoped it would. So these are issues that we've just getting better and better at. And I would say our pop-up tops right now, super quality. Like we're just not having very many problems. But we still have, we don't have any vans that we haven't been able to solve whatever challenges came up, even from the early days.
Yeah, I think leaks on pop tops is very common from what I've seen. So that's definitely a place that everyone has to pay attention. I've seen it happen even with the big guys, but that's
Yeah,
definitely a thing that could happen, right?
since we're here, yeah. So I'll give you the nitty gritty engineering. So actually,
Hmm.
the system that we use to seal the pop up top from leaks is pretty much tried and true. So you can look at
Hmm.
a company like Sportsmobile. They've been in business really since the 1960s, putting pop up tops on vans.
Hmm.
And there's a sealing system that everybody's kind of, we use a very similar sealing system that Sportsmobile does, and it works. It's effective. I mean, it has its deficiencies or whatever, but then you have the problem of making sure, because these vans are not built by robots, not yet. So making sure that that it's built, the engineering is correct to begin with, and then over time that the people that are actually doing the work are doing it in the way that it was originally designed, that is good and leaks. And so what we kind of discovered is we what actually happened was we had great leak problem with we had no problems with leaks in our first, let's say, 20 or 30 pop-up tops. So we thought we had it down pat. And then we hired more people to help us build faster. It makes sense. And we gave them training, and we were like, oh, okay, this is going to be, we have this system, it's been working. And then all of a sudden we find, some of our newest customers are having water leaks. And
Hmm.
what we did an investigation, and what we uncovered was that even though the person had had the training, he, wasn't doing the procedure correctly. So what we did was we kind of went back to the drawing board, and we said, okay, we need to improve our training, we need to improve our documentation. Also, we need to stop these leaks immediately by doing water testing on every van. And I've owned tents. I've been a tent camper a long time. And what I discovered as a tent camper was, not all tents come seam sealed from the factory. So, back in when we were kids, Hank, you bought a
Hmm.
tent from your local sporting goods store, and it didn't have seam seals. And what that means is if it rains, it'll come through the holes made by the needle when it does the stitching. And
Hmm.
so they make a seam sealer, and one of the first things you do when you buy a tent back in those days was you'd seam seal it if you plan to be out in the
Like a
rain. Yeah,
caveman.
Yep. And so anyway, I
Uh-huh.
discovered that, hey, if I sprinkle my tent with water on a hose that and it didn't leak, that was a really good sign that when I got it out in the field, that
Mm,
it's not going to leak either, because the hose, if you spray it hard enough, it actually does a really good job of simulating what you're going to encounter in the real world. And so
mm,
that's how we test our vans now. So, the first, like I said, 30 or so vans, we actually weren't leak testing. And, you know, people are like, why didn't you leak test from the beginning? And the answer is because, we're trying to build a van that's somewhat affordable for the masses, so we do have to pick and choose. We can't exhaustively test everything. So, and as we learn, we're like, okay, well, we made a mistake. We should have been leak testing from the beginning, because this is really important. And we learned that training's not perfect. So even though our engineering system is great, training's not perfect. So now we do leak test. And another one that kind of got us later was, let's say a customer, we have one right now, somebody hit an overhead sign, they put a dent in their van, we're going to do some repairs for them. Now we actually leak test after we do repairs, because we ran into the same problem. We did a repair for a customer. Customers drive around, first rain, they get some leaks in there. We learned that even repairs need to be leak tested. So now we have, our QA procedure is new builds and anything that's ever, even looked at exterior penetration is going to get leak tested again by mod vans before we deliver to the customer. And that combination has served us really, really well as far as leaks go.
yeah, and that's where experience counts. You have to have experience. And I think, just to move on from this and go to some other questions out there, the other difference with your pop top is that it's powered, right? Versus, I don't think I've seen anyone else do a powered pop top. Or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, there's some smaller companies like Mod Vans, the Sportsmobile,
Mm-hmm.
Colorado Camper Van. They offer
Okay.
power. Maybe they have a manual option as well. I think mostly everybody's gone to the power in my world.
Okay.
We specifically chose power from the beginning for two reasons. One is, on the engineering side, it's actually simpler for us than coming up with a compensation system like springs that would help somebody, or air cylinders that would help, get the top up when a person's not strong enough to lift it by themselves. The other one is, we wanted from the very beginning to be able to offer air conditioning and solar panels, and so we want to put those items on the roof. We want to be able to lift cargo, and being able to lift a 100-pound top plus a 100-pound air conditioner plus a 50-pound solar system is just not possible for you to. Most people just can't,
Oh,
push
okay. So the
400
so
pounds.
the air conditioner goes up on that pop top, or does it
Not on
goes
the
to an angle?
MH1. So this is
Oh, okay.
where, we have the three models. When we built the MH1, it was extended length. So we were able to
Hmm.
get some extra length on the back and get
Okay.
away from putting the air conditioner on the pop-up top. And that worked out really well on the MH1. Our other two models are too short. They're 20 feet long. And so in order to get an air conditioner, we had to put it on the pop-up top itself. And it actually
Hmm.
works really well for that design, because those are meant to be more SUV replacements. And then the air conditioner is in the perfect place for that scenario. Whereas the MH1 is more of a Class B RV. The air conditioner is more in the back in the bed, where it would traditionally be, but it's not on the MH1 pop-up top.
Okay. Very good.